When I was a kid, I got picked on and bullied a lot, especially by girls. They didn't like me and I didn't know why. I wasn't trying to be anything. I wasn't mean or loud or flashy or full of myself. I was just me. Awkward, quiet, intense, lost in thought one moment and trying desperately to fit in another. Always a step off from the rhythm everyone else seemed to know by heart. And girls picked up on that, and they didn't like it. And they didn't like me. I'd watch them form tight, glittering circles, cliques, and I'd stand just outside them, trying to figure out what invisible thread was keeping me out. The whispers, the looks, the way they excluded me like I'd broken some unspoken rule I never even knew existed. At times, they were outright cruel. I'd go home aching, wondering what I did wrong, wondering how to fix it, but there was no answer, because the truth was, I didn't even know I was different, so I concluded early that I was just wrong, defective, bad. At home, things weren't any better. If anything, they were worse. Home wasn't safe, not physically, not emotionally, not psychologically. The damage was so raw and relentless. It wasn't a place to heal. It was a trap where everything kept breaking again and again with no way out. I wasn't unseen exactly, but I was absorbed into my mother's chaos, seen too much but never really known, noticed only when she needed me as a mirror, a therapist, or a comforter, or when I upset the fragile balance. I lived on eggshells, trained to read moods before they turned dangerous. I learned how to anticipate storms, how to disappear when tension rose, how to twist myself into whatever shape would keep the peace. So when the world outside rejected me and the world inside terrified me, I didn't know where to go. All I knew was that I wanted out. And this sense wasn't just about escaping the immediate pain, it was a deeper longing to find a place where I could breathe without holding my breath. Somewhere I could be loud without fear, weird without judgment, and tired without shame. But no such place existed, at least not that I knew, so I folded inwards. Like a flower closing up at night, I shrank to protect the delicate parts of me. It was lonely in that small space I made for myself, but it was safer, and that loneliness stayed with me like a shadow, always there, waiting to stretch longer when the world felt cold. And then I hit my teens, and everything got messier. Boys started noticing me, and for the first time, I wasn't so invisible. I was interesting, desirable. And at first, that felt amazing, like maybe I'd finally found a place to belong. It felt like oxygen, like I could finally breathe. But as I got older, I started to see the pattern. It wasn't because they knew me, and it wasn't because they liked or saw me. It was because I was pretty. It was because they wanted me, and that's a big difference. It's strange to say, but being wanted, even if it wasn't real in any way that I wanted, felt safer than being invisible, or worse, being a target. Being pretty was a kind of shortcut, a way to be led into spaces where my weirdness had for so long kept me out. I didn't stop being awkward or quiet or sensitive or too intense, but now those things were tolerated because there was something in it for them. I was still weird, still neurodivergent, still struggling with social cues that never came naturally, but because guys were interested, I got a conditional pass. I could be myself as long as that self fit into their idea of who I should be. I got used to being wanted in pieces. My face, my body, yes. My intensity, my thoughts, not so much. Girls didn't want me, guys wanted me, but neither group really saw me. I was an outsider in both worlds, lonely in both spaces. It was confusing because being bullied felt like rejection, but being wanted felt like a different kind of trap, one where your worth is tied to how you look, not who you are. And I wanted more than that. I wanted connection. I wanted understanding. I wanted people to like me for myself, the me that I didn't even have the proper words for yet, not for a pretty mask. So I tried to learn to navigate this strange landscape, trying to fit in with girls who rejected me and boys who only wanted parts of me, hiding the parts I thought they wouldn't accept, pretending to be less intense, less awkward, and more normal. And it wore me down. I became exhausted trying to pretend to be the pretty girl who fits in while actually being the weird girl who never quite belonged. And here's where it got really hard. I was terrified to say no. If a guy liked me and I didn't feel the same way, I couldn't bring myself to say it because I knew what would happen. That glimmer, that promise of a connection would be gone. And I'd be alone again with no buffer from the world or the chaos waiting at home. And I couldn't bear that, so I said yes when I didn't mean it. I let things happen that I didn't really want because being in something I didn't fully choose still felt better than being alone again. Alone was cold. It was blackness, an overwhelming monster that was always hunting me down. Alone reminded me of every girl who turned her back, every circle I wasn't invited into. So I told myself it was fine, that maybe it would grow into something real. Maybe I could learn to like them. And that's what abuse does to your compass. It trains you to look for safety wherever you can find it, even if it's tenuous, even if it's conditional, and even if it's just a warm body next to you so you're not sitting alone in the dark by yourself. But underneath, I was shrinking, performing, hoping they wouldn't notice that I didn't belong in their world either. It's a strange thing to be both wanted and completely unseen, to be chosen but only by someone else's terms, to be praised for your appearance while your real self gathers dust in the back of your silently screaming mind. Looking back now, it all makes sense. I was neurodivergent, INFJ, traumatized, and so confused, trying to decode a world that ran on rules I didn't understand. And it's taken me a long time to unravel that, to admit how many choices I made that weren't really choices at all. They were trauma maneuvers, the kind that calculates what will hurt less, not what will make you happy. And I adapted and shape-shifted, smiled when I wanted to cry, said I'm fine when I was aching inside. And when I said yes to love I didn't feel, just to keep someone close, I was betraying myself and calling it survival. And that's what it was, survival. It wasn't about romance, it was about proximity, closeness, and warmth in a world that had always felt cold. In a way, I thought saying yes to someone meant I was being kind, that I was avoiding hurting them, but really I was avoiding rejection, avoiding the crash that always came when someone walked away. And I'd felt that crash too many times, at home, at school, in my own skin. So I became agreeable and charming, low maintenance, smiling when I was scared, nodding when I wanted to scream, dating people I didn't even like that way, and some that were very bad for me, because the alternative was being alone in a world that had already told me I was just wrong. And through it all, I was crushed under the weight of my own loneliness. Because being chosen doesn't mean being known, and being wanted doesn't mean being loved. And in the darkest phase, I shut it all down. No more relationships, no more effort. I completely disappeared into myself. And when I reemerged, older, technically grown, I still didn't know how to do relationships that felt real. I played the chameleon, still trying to belong in rooms that drained me. I smiled through things I didn't agree with. I kept the peace in places where I didn't feel safe, and I called people friends that I felt no connection with. But as I got older, I was willing to risk that loneliness that comes with honesty in exchange for the relief of not pretending. So I slammed doors, quietly and cleanly, not out of anger, just exhaustion. And now, looking back, I see the cost, how much I gave up just to survive, how often I silenced myself to keep that fragile piece of being liked. But now I'm okay with not fitting in. Well, mostly. Yes, sometimes I'm still misunderstood. But no amount of passing, no amount of being wanted can replace the freedom of being seen. And friends, I can't say that I have many. I don't really have that desire anymore. And that doesn't feel like failure. It feels like peace, relief. And I did finally meet someone who saw me and loved me and accepted me for who I am. And it's been 30 years now. And I don't feel lonely in my own life anymore.